you, Guru. I'm recording. And so we have seen until verses 33 in the previous week. Anybody, I know these are slightly philosophical sections that we are looking at. Anyone wants to share something that you remember until the verses 33? Anything from the chapter 4, even if it's just a topic or the title or a one word, whatever comes to your mind. Yes. What is the chapter about?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, transcendental knowledge, right? I
Yeah.
joined little late, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you. It's transcendental knowledge, yes. So anything else about the chapter? So we saw how Krishna spoke to Arjuna, that how he gave this transcendental knowledge to sun god, and Arjuna ends up asking this question like, sun god is, you're saying that you gave this knowledge before millions of years to sun god. However, by your age, it should not be possible or feasible. And Krishna explains how he is. Gokul, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just before that, some devotees saying in the group like they are not able to join. Hare
Oh,
Krishna.
they are not able to join in the sense they don't. There's
Not
not
able to
issue, right?
connect.
But if we all have here, there should not be a technical issue, right?
Just wanted to tell you. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just check the WhatsApp group. I think Mother Yogeshwari is already here. I did see her. She dropped in. Just a minute, I'll just text her back. So Krishna explains about his transcendental nature. Gokul, you wanted to say something? Okay. So Krishna explains about his transcendental um, nature, birth, and also he explains how anyone who understands his transcendental nature is also can be free from material bondage. And then we saw this section from 16 to 24, like how actually with this knowledge of Krishna's transcendence, how if somebody works, then that work is actually reaction free or it does not create bondage. And pretty much we are going to see the same topic in the 5th chapter again, but there are some differences that we will see why Krishna is again emphasizing this. It's and we also saw the qualities of a detached worker, and we spoke about the three types of uh, reactions or three types of karma. That section also we saw how there is karma, akarma, and vikarma, and also the different types of sacrifices and why we do sacrifices. And so currently, after seeing what is the purpose of the sacrifices and why do we need to do sacrifices, here we are in this section, which speaks about the glories of transcendental knowledge. So the connection between the previous section and this is that Krishna did speak about the need for transcendental knowledge. and the purpose of transcendental knowledge. So now the natural question is, how do I receive this knowledge? I understand this, but how do I practically receive in my life? How do I gain this transcendental knowledge? So that's what is being discussed primarily in this section, along with glories of the transcendental knowledge. So first, Krishna speaks about how to receive knowledge in verse 34. This is a very famous verse, and might be possible that some of you already know this verse. Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshayanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. That how uh, Krishna informs Arjuna that the way to acquire this transcendental knowledge is to approach a self-realized spiritual master, and with humble inquiry and service, one needs to acquire this knowledge from those who have already understood this knowledge. So that is why here Krishna explains what is the quality of a student, because uh, in school or in other academic institutions, it is a very different thing. Like, it's not necessary that a student needs to have any qualities, as far as as long as they are intelligent and they are able to grasp the subject, it is enough. But when it comes to transcendental knowledge, Krishna emphasizes what are the qualities of a student in order to assimilate knowledge, especially the transcendental knowledge. It's not an information which is stored, but which also can create transformation in the character of the student. So the first one is pranipatena, that means humility. He says, but the first thing is that one should be humble towards the spiritual teacher. So, and that means that one needs to understand, I do not know what is a transcendence. Please guide me. So that is the mood with which a disciple approaches the spiritual master. So that is why we begin before the beginning this section also, we saw that how we recited the prayer Om Agyana Timirandasya, because we are born into ignorance, so we don't understand clearly what is the way to actually transcendence, because we are currently covered by ignorance. So that's why a student needs to understand that, needs to recognize that I really do not know. And in that mood, when the student approaches the spiritual teacher, then the inquiries become useful. So, first is humility. So, just because here Krishna is asking the student to be humble, it does not mean Krishna is calling for blind faith or a blind following. He is not actually emphasizing that, because he immediately follows up with pranipatena, with pariprashnena. He says, no, I'm not calling for blind faith. Rather, Krishna is calling for intelligent inquiry. Because if we want to develop spiritual vision, uh, currently the teacher has the spiritual vision. If we want that spiritual vision, we need to develop a capacity for that through proper inquiry. So it is to develop that spiritual vision of the spiritual master teacher through proper inquiry, accompanied by the next quality, which is very important also in spiritual life, which is sevaya, service. So through service to Guru and Krishna, accompanied with proper inquiry and humility, a student can acquire very easily transcendental knowledge, which can be very transformative, which can actually transform the character of the student, which can actually produce spiritual transformation of the heart. And also, the student can experience fulfillment through such uh, exchange of knowledge, through such reception of knowledge. So, after discussing the process to receive knowledge and the qualities of a student, Krishna speaks about the glories of the transcendental knowledge. Glories in the sense, because this transcendental knowledge, if it is so transformative and powerful, what happens when somebody actually receives it? So, there are at least four of the things that are discussed in these four verses. So, first thing is, it dispels the illusion of the student. What is the illusion of the student? The illusion is that currently the student is identifying with the body, So this transcendental knowledge is to actually make the student understand that the real knowledge is to distinguish matter from spirit, or spirit from matter. So that first illusion is dispelled, revealing the unity of all living beings as part of the Supreme, so that we are all spirit souls and we all belong to the Supreme Lord. So currently, that is being covered, that knowledge. So that is being dispelled, that the student understands who am I and who is God and what is my connection with God. So all of these things become apparent for the student. So the next glories of the transcendental knowledge is that it overcomes sin. Because if anyone who's born into this world has some amount of sinful reactions, that is the reason we have this body. So somebody may be beautiful, somebody may be handsome, somebody may not be, somebody may be tall, somebody may be short. So there may be various differences in the bodies that we have. So some bodies may be someone's physical appearance may be highly sought after, and somebody may hanker for a different kind of an physical appearance. That's why today the plastic surgery and all these things and the cosmetics, they're all like highly in demand because there is an idea of beauty. However, what Krishna is saying here is, as soon as a person has this material body, whether they are beautiful or handsome or not according to the worldly standards, it actually is very clear that there is some amount of karmic reactions, and that is the reason the body is there. So Krishna is saying, even if a person is very sinful, we are all sinful to some extent, but even if a person is very sinful, like most sinful, still that person can cross over the ocean of miseries. That person can cross over the material ocean or can be liberated through this transcendental knowledge. This knowledge, especially the spiritual knowledge, can counteract the sinful reactions of the person. And the third benefit is that it burns all the karmic reactions, which is very similar. But here, the fire of knowledge burns all reactions to material activities, like fire turns wood to ashes, means it does not leave any trace. It completely removes the tendency to actually perform sin. That is also removed along with the reactions. And then wisdom is revealed in due course through the practice. Now that the disciple has heard from the teacher, through proper inquiry and humility and service, and gradually when the student starts applying that knowledge, so then it becomes a part of realization. So now currently it is information, but it becomes completely realized knowledge through application. So this transcendental knowledge is so pure that just by the practice of application of this knowledge, gradually the wisdom becomes revealed in the heart of the student. So that is the glory of the knowledge about Nishkama Karma Yoga, which Krishna gave to the sun god in the beginning of the millennium. And from sun god, it came to through their family, through Manu and Ikshvaku and like that. And eventually it got lost. And that knowledge, Krishna is again speaking to Arjuna. So he's speaking about the glories of Nishkama Karma Yoga, that is working with detachment. So he is again emphasizing to Arjuna that it is a very important knowledge. And the reason it is being given to kings is that kings are not supposed to renounce king, at least in their prime of their life. They are supposed to actually serve the society. So Krishna is trying to impress upon the mind of Arjuna that your duty is not to give up your profession at this point, rather to engage in the service of the society through the practice of Nishkama Karma Yoga. And that is why he said, I gave it to sun god and it came through the parampara. It got lost. So I am giving it to you. So you should have ideally got this knowledge, but somehow you did not. So I'm giving it to you. That means he is trying to impress upon Arjuna that it is his duty to fight, not give up. And he also speaks about the eligibility of such receiving such knowledge. That is, if somebody needs to acquire spiritual knowledge in the real sense, so then faith is required. This faith is not an unreasonable faith. It is a reasonable faith. That means one can listen, apply, and try to see if it works. Because rejecting all faith as blind faith is also blind faith. So, here, what Krishna is asking is an investment of a reasonable amount of faith, and not just hearing, but also devoted to the practice, applying it with senses control. So with this combination, three combination, that one needs to have faith, one needs to control the senses, and one needs to apply the knowledge. These three things are the eligibility for receiving transcendental knowledge. And he says if somebody is actually unnecessarily doubtful, is doubtful for the sake of being uh, like, or due to being cynical, a kind of a faithful doubter, in the sense he has faith in doubt than in faith. So such a person who continues to doubt without any proper reason, so that person cannot actually understand this transcendental knowledge. So they cannot experience spiritual happiness either in this life or in next life. So that is what the 40th verse is saying. And Krishna is saying in the 41st verse, these are last two verses, 41 and 42, very important verses. We will see them in detail in again in 5th chapter also, because Krishna says that yoga sannyasta karmanam, like by giving up the fruits of actions, by renouncing the fruits of actions and destroying the doubts with the transcendental knowledge, one becomes truly self-realized. And also, even though he is acting in this world, he is working, he is not bound by any karmic reactions. So that is why Krishna is calling for this final thing to Arjuna, that cut your doubts born of ignorance with the sword of knowledge. So this transcendental knowledge is like a sword. So Krishna is saying, pick up this sword and cut your doubts, destroy your doubts, and stand up. He is not saying fight, but he just says Atishta Uttishta Bharata, means Uttishta means get up. So the idea of saying get up is to say that stand up and fight. Take up this fight as your duty, and pick and destroy your doubts, all that you're having in your mind, all the unnecessary doubts. Destroy them with the sword of spiritual knowledge, transcendental knowledge. So this sets a full-on confusion for Arjuna. So we all think, okay, I heard this chapter and I understood. But for Arjuna, the situation was he heard all of these things, that whatever Krishna has explained in 2nd chapter, 3rd chapter, 4th chapter, he has been again and again speaking about working with detachment. I don't know how it is not clear to uh, Arjuna, but the fact is, it is not clear to him. He is unable to grasp that why should I fight? And we will see in the beginning of the 5th chapter what is the reason for that. Because now, since we will just see the fact that since Krishna is calling for fighting, what is the exact meaning that he is implying? What kind of fight he is asking Arjuna to wage, and the emphasis that he keeps on certain words in these particular verses. We will discuss that, because is Krishna speaking about the inner war one needs to fight, or the outer war that Arjuna needs to fight? Because if Krishna is emphasizing the outer war that Arjuna needs to fight, if that is the idea, that Krishna is speaking all these things to inspire Arjuna to fight the external war that he was facing in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, then how is Gita's call to fight relevant to us? Because that was Arjuna's personal situation. And I don't think in my life I will ever be on a battlefield where I have to face a war. Very unlikely. So, how is then Gita's call to fight, or Krishna's call to fight, is relevant to us today? And also, if it is the inner war, if it is Krishna was just speaking about the inner war, that kill your doubts with the sword of knowledge, then what about, then Arjuna might think, oh, maybe you're not asking me to externally fight, it's just an internal war. So this is where Arjuna's confusion is coming. Is it an inner war that Krishna is asking me to wage, or an outer war Krishna is asking me to wage? And this is very relevant to us also. If it is just an outer war, then how is it relevant to us? So let's discuss that. The translation to 42nd verse, as Srila Prabhupada translates, is like, therefore the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed with the sword of knowledge or weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. So this is exactly what Srila Prabhupada is writing. So based on this understanding, we can see Krishna's call for fight is both metaphorical and also literal, because he uses the word sword of knowledge or weapon of knowledge. So how many of you know what is Arjuna famous for wielding which weapon?
Bow and arrow.
Yeah, he is an archer,
No.
right? He is an archer, and bow and arrows are the weapon that he is very skilled at. He is called Savyasachi, that he could actually release arrows, like shoot arrows with the same amount of dexterity and perfection with both his hands. We all can write in one of the hands, but it's very difficult for us to write on the other hand that we are not used to. But he is called Savyasachi because he was uh, talented enough to use his bow and arrows in either of his hands with equal amount of perfection. But here, if you see, Krishna is not asking him to pick up his bow and fight. He is saying, pick the sword of knowledge, and that too a metaphorical sword, because he is not speaking about the sword, he is speaking the sword of knowledge. So, what do you do with knowledge? You slash ignorance, you slash doubts. So, it means it is a very metaphorical thing that Krishna is saying, pick up the sword of knowledge and cut the ignorance. So, he is asking Arjuna to focus on the internal things that is stopping him from doing his duty. Then how about the literal aspect of it? Then uh, where is the actual fight coming into picture? Because he is also saying stand up. So how now we need to understand this is Krishna is calling for Arjuna to destroy his inner enemies through the understanding of picking up the sword of transcendental knowledge. And that is how universality of Gita is also, it is relevant to us even today, because Krishna is asking one to fight against inner misconceptions. So most of the times for us, like as long as Arjuna, we all have a narrow vision of life, like how Arjuna is fighting with. We may not have to fight a war like Arjuna have to on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, but we all have to fight against our own inner misconceptions, which make us hesitate or vacillate or oscillate. Like basically, we are confused when we are faced with challenges because of our own inner misconceptions. So Krishna is asking, fight a war against those things. So here with the Gita wisdom, he is providing us that the sword of knowledge to rise above or to cut through the ambiguity that we have in our hearts, in our minds, and to develop clarity of vision, what is actually life. So, in that sense, this is relevant for us even today, because it's not just about the external war, because Krishna is asking him to slash the enemy of knowledge, that is the doubts. And those inner misconceptions is what holding us most of the time in life. Many times, it's not that we lack time or energy or resources. It is just we are caught up in our own heads. We are just caught up in our own stories that we tell ourselves. We are caught up in our own uh, idea of what we can do and what we cannot do, and all these past impressions and our own judgment. These confusion creates a lot of traffic jam in the head that we end up not getting anywhere actually. We just get completely stuck up in that traffic jam in our heads. So Krishna is asking that fight that inner misconception and use the sword of transcendental knowledge to cut through that ambiguity and come to clarity of what is our duty, what is our purpose in life. So in that way, Krishna is making this call for duty, call for fight, very relevant to us. At the same time, he is also making it relevant to Arjuna's immediate circumstances by actually referring to Atishta Uttishta Bharata, means please get up and fight. By saying this, he is also making it relevant to Arjuna's immediate situation. So he is combining both. He is asking for an internal fight and he is also asking for an external fight in the case of Arjuna. So this is where Arjuna gets little confused because he is not sure which one he needs to, because he is thinking they both cannot go together. He sees if it is an internal war, that's a path of renunciation. If it's an external war, that's a path of karma. And he does not think both of these things can go together. And that's what will cause his question in the beginning of the next chapter. And why Krishna is asking us to fight the inner war? Because only when the inner conflict ends, there is peace. Everybody in the world is hankering for peace, but we cannot be peaceful unless we are actually unless the inner conflict is resolved. Otherwise, we may be in the perfect situation, but if we have an inner conflict, we cannot be peaceful. So that is one reason Krishna is asking to end the inner conflict through transcendental knowledge, so one can become actually peaceful and focus on the actual thing at hand. And inner war, when does it stop? Inner war stops only when we are aligned with our purpose. So the purpose of the soul is service to Krishna and is to realign its refocus and reawaken its love for Krishna. And only when that happens, when we are aligned with that purpose, and when our purpose is aligned with Krishna's purpose, when that alignment is there, then inner war naturally stops. And when that inner conflict is not there, then there is naturally peace. So these are some of the thoughts for this chapter. And this kind of ends where Krishna is asking Arjuna to rise and fight, both internally and externally, using this knowledge of karma, akarma, and vikarma, understanding what is action, what is inaction, what is uh, forbidden action, how to work with the detachment, and how to convert one's life and actions into a sacrifice. Sacrifice means yagya, for the pleasure of Krishna. How to engage everything in our life activities as a spiritual offering. How to make life into a spiritual offering. So that knowledge is what Krishna is giving, and now he is saying, here is an opportunity to make your life into a spiritual offering. So rise and fight. So this is where Krishna ends this chapter. So I know we have discussed some intricate topics. So if you want to share anything, ask any doubts, or add anything, or clarify, please feel free. I want to hear some voices in the room.
Hare Bo.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so I understood what you were talking about, going back to text 18, but the text itself always confuses me. One who sees inaction in action, I get that, and action in inaction is intelligent among men. Can you just give a quick example of that? Because I know you have several times, but every time I go back to this,
yes.
Go ahead.
So when Krishna says in action, that means like if somebody is doing work, but still it is as good as not working, because it is not going to create any karmic bondage for them. It's not going to accrue good or bad karma. Because of that, that work is as good as not working in the world. So that
An
is
example?
Why in action, that Prabhupada gives any devotional activity
Right.
done for the pleasure of Krishna is not going to create either good or bad karmas. In that sense, we are not acting. At the same time, we are fully engaged. And the other side is the to see action in inaction. Somebody is lazy, somebody is being neglectful of their duties. So they may assume because I'm not doing anything, I will not get any reaction. But Krishna is saying giving up one's duty is also an action, because not acting is a bigger statement. Like sometimes you see people actually don't go to their jobs, and like what they call it in the US, I'm not sure. In India they call it a strike. The employees
Yes.
go on a strike. So that is a bigger statement actually, to say that I will not do my duty, and I will today forsake my duty, is a bigger statement actually. So that's what Krishna is trying to say. There is action in that inaction. To say that, oh, I will just give it up, is a bigger statement, that it is not going to make it easy for anybody to not have any reactions just by giving up one's duty. So Prabhupada in the purports, he gives the example of many examples he gives. In one place, he gives the example of a mother. It is the duty of the mother to, or the parents, to take care of the child. But after having the child, the parent cannot say, oh no, okay, I will not do my duty, because that becomes a what do you call, failure of duty, and it creates unnecessary problems, and it creates a chain reaction.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. And one other question was the burns. So the glories of transcendental knowledge, it burns all karmic reaction.
Mhm.
Now, does it mean moving forward? Yes. Okay.
If you see, there were 2 points. One was no sins, and one was all the karmic reactions burnt. Both the things look like they are very similar, but exactly they are addressing the point that you are asking. And sorry that I did not clarify it while speaking, because one of those points is about what happened in the past. So it burns away all that which we have already come along with, and what we have left aside to be experienced in the future lives, if we had future lives. So because we are only currently we are only experiencing one part or a portion of the actual karma that we have. The rest of the baggage is like kept aside for us. It's in our lockers, it's in our safe, in our account. But currently we are only given, like, say sometimes we have a metro card, or like we have a card, only a fixed amount is put in that. You have it in your credit card, more money, but currently in your metro card you only have 20 or $30, something like that. For this life, a certain amount of karma is set aside by Krishna, but there is a lot more that we all have it in for the future. So all of those things that is set aside for the future, and currently what is being left over in our current account, all of those things can be burned through spiritual practice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Purva. Thank you, Mother Indra.
So in verse 35, it says that we need to obtain real knowledge from self-realized soul. But
Mm-hmm.
how do we recognize the self-realized soul, and how do we find them? Like, what do we do?
It's
And how do we recognize?
yeah, that's a very interesting and an important question also. I feel, to be very honest, sometimes like not so qualified to answer the question. At the same time, many times I also have the question and the answers that I've heard, that's what I'm going to share with you. Especially one groundbreaking, kind of a ground shaking kind of answer that I've heard was from His Holiness or His Divine Grace Gaur Govinda Swami Maharaj. He says, we are nobody to actually find self-realized souls. If we are sincere, Krishna will actually send them to find us. Because if I don't know what is gold, there is no way in the world you keep gold before me and I'm going to come say, oh wow, here is gold, because I don't know. So how in this world how I will know this is gold, because I don't know. So because we don't have self-knowledge, it's somewhat evident. It's not completely, unless we are completely like ignorant, it does not escape us. but still we cannot vet someone who's like really self-realized or not with our own current level of understanding. So praying to Krishna for that opportunity to interact and receive knowledge from a self-realized soul. That prayer needs to be offered to Krishna, and Krishna will, in the form of Paramatma, understands our heart and arranges for a self-realized soul to help us. Okay, thank you. Mother Ishwari, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Sorry, I'm in a hotel room, so I'm trying to find a position that's comfortable here. I have kind of a reflection, but it might be a question because I might need you to correct me if I'm wrong. For the longest time, especially when I was studying to my teacher training, they teach us this thing, about helping your students find their purpose, helping them find their dharma. And it makes me question my own purpose in life and my own dharma. Like I have my whole entire life. And I associated it with, okay, my mother put me to work in corporate America at the age of 17. So my purpose is to be in corporate America. While it wasn't the happiest place in the world for me, it was actually the saddest place in the world for me. But I knew that it made money and I needed money to survive college and then marriage and children and so on and so forth. But when we're reading this, it's telling us that our dharma is our purpose is to reconnect with Krishna, with God. And that, and so my reflection is like, I've been in corporate, it's going to be, believe it or not, 40 years next year, in June. And for the longest time, it was like my prison. I would always feel like the four walls of an office or of a workstation cubicle, whatever we want to call it nowadays, whether they put glass on it or whether there's a solid wall, it was still a prison for me. But at the end of the day, I was grateful because what it does give me and what it was able to provide for my family, my friends, my charities. But now I'm still there. I'm still working in finance for a family office and work for wonderful people. And I prayed for this position. I said to Krishna, if I have to stay in corporate, please let me find a job where I don't care how rich they are, but they're kind. And he did. He was merciful. But now it's like I'm in corporate and I don't feel like I'm in prison because I have that connection with Krishna now. So my purpose was never to be, like my college degree or my job. It was my connection to Krishna, which then makes everything that I do, whether it's working, whether it's taking care of my kids, this road trip I am with my younger one, it's all in service to God. And it just changes your whole entire life around. Those things that were a prison for you are no longer in prison. Like the shackles are off, everything is off. You're completely free in everything that you do. So that's my understanding of this purpose in life. And so I'm not sure if it's a reflection or if it's a correction.
No, it's beautiful reflection. Basically, you spoke many verses of Bhagavatam and the many concepts of Bhagavad Gita in your reflection. There's one very nice verse by Brahmaji. He says, Tavad ragadayas tenasya tavad nate Krishna jana. Means he says like that all the material desires that we have, they become like shackles or they become like thieves. The family bondage becomes like shackles. But only as long as a person does not have Krishna. The moment Krishna comes into the equation, then all those things actually completely change. They are not just shackles, they are not bondages. So that's what one thing that came to me. That's exactly the verse from the 10th canto that Brahmaji is saying. And as far as the concept of the purpose, you also know, and we had discussed in this class, that how we have both the purposes in this world as long as we have the body. One is Swadharma and the other one is the Sanatan Dharma. Swadharma is based on our own subtle body, like the mind and the intelligence and the kind of physical body we have. Based on that, we may have certain kind of inclinations and skills and desires. And yeah, the best is if they say, right, if what the world needs and what you love to do, if they both match, your life becomes a vacation. So for some people, it is very natural. It just how life comes together. But for some people, it takes a while to understand. And the way the current society is there, most of us may just match those two areas, like what I'm great at doing and what gets paid. So that's two circles that intersect. But there are more circles like what do I love to do and what the world needs, what is my purpose. So the best sweet spot is when all these circles intersect and that purpose. And however, even if all of those circles are intersecting and we are situated, like you really love finance, you're comfortable as a person doing that work, and like I'm saying to say, still when not having Krishna can make it at some level dry.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's one, if after having everything perfectly arranged on the Swadharma aspect, still if our connection with Krishna is missing, still we may feel that lack. For some people, they have Krishna's connection, but somehow there is tension still on the Swadharma aspect because they are not able to do what they love to do because that does not pay them. Or what they love to do and what they're great at doing and what they get paid may not be the most contributing thing for the society. So there's this conflict one needs to gradually adjust. Okay, how do I balance that? So because it involves, as you said, a lot of practical things like money, society, family, peer pressure, our own desires. So that needs to go through a lot more personal guidance and what do you call, like meditation and maturity through as good as like a spiritual teacher. But as long as we have Krishna's connection, we will be able to gradually work through those things.
Yeah, it is 100% true because finance has never been like something I like, but it's something necessary in this world anyway. So when you surrender to Krishna, you kind of surrender to your situation and look at it totally different. So now I actually got to last year pick the areas that I actually want to work in the office. So I still have accounting and some of that stuff in there, but the rest of it is almost mostly people operations, which is right up my alley. So in a way, like I'm still in that wealth management situation, but in a different way. And I'm always able to bring Krishna consciousness into the office, and people do appreciate that. And then they start to ask me questions. And then in the office, like I never thought that I would ever be able to have people in a corporate world interested so much in Krishna consciousness and what's going on with me. So in a way, I have found that peace at the workplace, but staying steady on the course and finding Krishna consciousness in such a, I don't want to say toxic environment, but very complicated and difficult environment to navigate.
Yeah, we're very happy that you're finding that sweet spot with balancing both the aspects of Swadharma and your connection with Krishna, and bringing it back to your workspace and introducing people. So that gives that makes it all very sweet. And even if there are certain tension,
Thank you.
still it helps us manage the whole thing. Thank you for the reflection, Krishna. So is there anyone else who wants to ask, share, or something like that before
Yeah,
we?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
So from my side, there is one verse, right, where they say that where Krishna says like the sacrifice done during when you have gained the transcendental knowledge is more better than the sacrifice done when you have just the materialistic knowledge. But I just want to understand, like, even though we are on the transcendental knowledge platform, we will sacrificing those things only. We will be sacrificing those material things only, right? I mean, I just want to like understand like what kind of sacrifices done when.
Particular verse that you're referring to, if you read the translation, I'm not sure of the number of the verse, but I think, but the translation goes something like, sacrifice done in knowledge is much better than mere sacrifice of material possessions, because people may do things as ritualistically they may give up things or do spiritual practices, but that is okay, that is not bad. But much better is to do it with proper knowledge why we are doing it. Why am I sacrificing? To whom I am sacrificing? What am I sacrificing? So that whole understanding, with the proper understanding and spiritual knowledge, when that sacrifice is done, then Krishna says that has more value. that has basically, what is the value? The value Krishna is speaking about is like personal transformation. So it carries more, it isn't, that means this person is going to be transformed quickly. So that is why he is saying that is better. Let me find that verse that you're referring to.
Yeah, I got you. I got it. I think the sacrifices is centered around Krishna so that he can manage the fruits easily. I
Yeah,
think so. That's what he wants to convey there.
yeah.
It's number 33.
Number 33, right? Yes. The sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions.
Mhm.
Makes sense?
Okay. Yeah. Got it. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So we have a few minutes. So let's just begin the 5th chapter and then see how far we can go. At least I can give the introduction to it. So then we can start easily the next week. Just a minute. I'm just shifting. So the 5th chapter is titled as Karma Sannyasa Yoga. So this is one chapter where we will be seeing some of the shlokas directly because it is very important for us to understand the Sanskrit also and to get the actual concepts. In English, I have put it as art of detached work. In Sanskrit, it is Karma Sannyasa Yoga. And with this chapter, pretty much we will be done with this detachment and whether to work or not work. That whole concept will come to an end with this chapter. This is the last chapter. We'll be discussing about work in the Bhagavad Gita or the Karma Yoga. And before I forget, I wanted to share with everyone in the call that I'm planning a in-person gathering after we complete the first 6 chapters, which is the Karma Yoga section. So I wanted to know how interested you are all. I'm thinking September 7th, which is a month after from now, is like a one weekend. We could do it on a Saturday, the same times, a little later, maybe something like 10:30 to 12:30 and have prasad, something like that. Or if Saturday evenings are better, we could do 4 to 6, 4:30 to 4 to 6, 6:30, something like that, and have dinner. So I will surely post a poll in the WhatsApp group. However, I just wanted to check if this works for some of you, at least those who are in New York City. And I haven't decided what we will do, but I was thinking Amit Kishori and Jeffrey Prabhu's, they did conversational style of Bhagavad Gita. So I thought we could do a really short version of the 6 chapters that we could do. And also if the participants, like if all of you, any of you want to present something, you want to choose a topic, any of the boys and the kids want to present something, they pick up a topic, they want to share something for a few minutes, or they want to come up with a quiz or anything like that for an hour or so, we all could be together and just discuss on the 6 chapters. I thought we are always doing it online. Once in 6 chapters, at least we could meet in person, I was thinking. So if you all agree, I'll do post a poll. And Hare Krishna, we're welcoming a new member. Introduce him.
Oh, I'm sorry, she was crying. This is Rasalila,
Oh,
Mataji.
that's Leela, baby. Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Hi. So yeah, I'll post the poll, but I just wanted to inform all of you. I see many of the hearts coming up, so I'll be so if all of you agree, then we can surely do it. I'll think more what more we could include in the programming. But yeah, we will do that. And I'm planning for September 7th, which is a Saturday. So I hope Saturdays work for most people than Sundays. So I'll post more details in the poll and you can let me know what works and not. So let's get into the chapter 5. Or is it time? It's almost 55. So I think let's do it next week then. Anyway, again, I will have to do the introduction next week. So let's begin the fifth chapter next week. And I hope to finish the fifth chapter in 2 weeks. Let's see what is the plan as it unfolds. But my plan before September 7th, complete the sixth chapter so that when we meet on September 6th, we could just have a discussion on the six chapters. So if you have any more ideas what we could do during the personal gathering, in-person gathering, you can let me know. So thank you all. Thank you for joining today. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna. Hare
Hare
Bhagavad.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Ishwari Hare Bol. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I have one question. I am not switching on my camera because here it is too hot. So I'm okay. So
Yeah.
just wanted to ask, like sometimes, like even though I'm there, I feel that let's say I'm watching a movie, okay. So sometimes I feel I'm wasting my time, but still I got it. I feel like let's complete it. So even though I know that I'm just wasting this time, but I'm not able. I mean, but I'm not able to get detached from it. So in that situation, like how to get out of that? Like, see, for my one of the addiction is like sometimes I get in the loop. Like let's say I start doing wrong. I'm not. Let's say I'm start something doing wrong. Like let's say I'm doing the math, some problem, something wrong. That's what I have analyzed about my life. So if I'm doing wrong, I'm not able to get out of that loop itself. I mean, it takes a long time to get out of that loop. Similarly, let's say I'm watching movie, even though I know it's wrong, I know I am wasting time, but I'm not able to leave that.
Yeah, next week in the fifth chapter, there is this topic like how to manage desires. There is whole topic. So the idea is neither gratification nor repression. Means just by
Mhm,
satisfying all the desires that comes to us, we cannot manage them properly. That is not a solution. Nor we can just say no to things. That is also not the best way. So we cannot
mhm,
blindly say yes or no to them. Rather, on the side, start in like purifying the desires. Basically, that means like basically making your connection with Krishna strong. Then you can rise
mhm,
above those desires. You will that those desires will be replaced with better desires, positive desires. So that is how we can actually what do you call, overcome
mhm,
the lower desires. So the more you engage in devotion service seriously, those
mhm, mhm,
desires get replaced with higher desires. That is the
mhm,
most safe way to actually manage the desires.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, got it. Okay. Mhm.
So
Okay, basically
totally on the
keep
side,
engaging
just
yourself in
currently
the.
where you know
Mhm,
whatever is your current strength, आपके पास जितना शक्ति है, whatever is your current strength, using that you manage them. But on the
mhm,
side, utilize your time and focus in creating your connection with Krishna stronger through chanting Hare Krishna and through reading Bhagavatam or associating with devotees and hearing proper lectures. So in this way, have some concrete plan for engaging in spiritual practice, in a serious spiritual, regulated spiritual practice. That will give you the ability to overcome those desires naturally. They will get replaced with good desires. So then it will not be a problem. We don't need to struggle because we'll never be able to uh, just like what do you call, like without having a strong spiritual connection, we will never be able to overcome the lower desires.
mhm. And what I
Even if you
observed,
try
these things.
for some time, it can work, but it will not work forever.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. Hare Krishna.
Thank
Okay.
you. Hare Krishna. See you for next
ठीक
time.
है. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you.